who had face paint all over his face, hiding inside of a closet. He comes out of the closet with a hatchet. We don't like that. Welcome back to another episode of Killer Queens. I am Tyrella, and I'm going to tell you about a pretty disturbing case today. I know I could say that for a lot of them. Today's especially disturbing for spooky reasons. I'm not going to lie to you. Researching this and reading about it, I got pretty scared. And I'm a grown up and it was daytime, but here we are. I do want to start with a hey girl thanks to Allison Mathis and Kai Love for requesting the case. And hey girl thanks to Beth for writing it up. All right, so let me give you just like a slight little overview, okay? In 1986, in a small town in Massachusetts, the Bowen family was grieving the loss of their mother and wife after a battle with cancer. The two teenage girls spent a lot of time in the home alone with their father, Frank, who was at work. They start hearing noises in their home. They kind of thought maybe their house was haunted. It turned out that a boy that the oldest daughter had gone on a date with was living in the walls and was watching them. After being caught and subsequently released, less than a year later, Danielle LaPlante murdered a pregnant woman and her two young children while burglarizing their home. Now, there is mention of child death, murder in this episode. So I do just want to put that out there. I will make sure to warn you when that part is coming up. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail there. It's horrific. I also do want to say that there is a lot of speculation about the whole living in the walls thing. And that's really just a small part of the story. Obviously, the murders he committed is going to be the main focus. This case is kind of mixed a little bit with like a horrific murder and that crime and just how he ended up doing that and a little bit of urban legend kind of thing. So we'll get into it. I just want to say, I know that there's speculation. If you hear the name Danielle LaPlante, you will immediately think, if you've been into true crime for any particular length of time, like when this came up on our schedule to record and all of that, I already was familiar with it. And immediately I thought, oh, that's the kid who lived in the walls, right? Like, so anyway, it's kind of like he's become known as that. But there is some speculation about that and we'll talk about it. Okay. Let's jump right into it. Daniel J. LaPlante was born on May the 15th, 1970 in Townsend, Massachusetts. His parents divorced when he was young, and he was raised by his mother, who eventually did remarry. His mother had a difficult relationship with his father. We don't know a lot about Daniel's very early life growing up. We do know that it seemed to be traumatic. Now, his mother says he didn't witness any violence or anything like that. I am not totally sure about that. I don't know. He did struggle with what appears to be ADHD. I've seen it described as attention deficit disorder, which would be ADD in some articles. And in others, I've seen it described as hyperactive disorder, which to me feels like ADHD if we're combining those two. He did do fairly well in school, but he did struggle. He was bullied a lot, that kind of stuff. He ended up being sent to a psychiatrist, and according to Daniel, he was abused by this person. In his teen years, he started committing burglaries. He would burglarize people around town, like just neighbors and stuff like that. He would break into their houses. He would take jewelry. He would take other things. Obviously not great. But that did not seem to be leading up to what we're going to be talking about. Like, it's crazy. All right. We're going to talk about the Bowen family. And I want you to know that if you look at different articles, different places that you can find this kind of information, you're going to see it listed as the Andrews family and you're going to see it listed as the Bowen family. From what I can understand, and again, this case has become kind of murky and muddy, and it's kind of been turned into somewhat of urban legend. It appears that the Bowen family is the family that we're talking about. And at some point, Tina became known as Annie Andrews. So if you see the Andrews family, we are going to talk about the Bowen family because that seems to be the accurate name of this family. So Frank Bowen is the father. Tina Bowen is the oldest daughter, who we are going to talk about mostly. And then Karen Bowen is the younger daughter. I believe Tina was about 15. Karen was like 9. Frank is the dad. Their mother had passed away from a battle with cancer. You will see in different places that Daniel LaPlante and Tina Bowen went to high school together and they briefly dated. You will also see some blogs and stuff like that will call her Annie Andrews and will say that Daniel just called her house one day and said, "Hey, is this Annie, Tina, whatever? Yeah, I got your number from my friend who said we'd be good, like a good match or something." He describes himself as very tall, very blonde, very athletic, chit-chatting on the phone with her. He asks her to go on a date. She's like, "Yeah, sure, that's fine." She meets him. He doesn't look anything like what he said. And halfway through the date, she gets super creeped out because she says that he is asking about her mom a lot, asking about how she died, but asking in a way that's like, "Ooh, did she suffer a lot?" What, that he was like lighting up about it. That part, I don't know if it's true. It doesn't seem like it. It seems like the most logical explanation is that they knew each other in high school and they had gone out maybe once or twice or whatever, and she stopped dating him. It makes less sense that a random person she doesn't know would be calling her house, would be talking to her, and then she would agree to go out with him. You know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't really seem super logical. So I think that's where some of this gets mixed in and muddied and like, what's urban legend? What's real? I am going to go with the Bowen family and that they knew each other kind of thing. Okay. So their relationship, whatever it was, however short-lived it was, ends. And over this period of time, Tina and Karen started hearing some strange noises in their home. And they would hear kind of like knocking, like seemed like knocking kind of in the walls. Furniture was getting moved around. Other items were getting moved around. The TV would turn on and off by itself, like all kinds of things, right? They would tell their father, Frank, "This is going on. Feels pretty weird." And he was like, "That's obviously your imagination. Like, that's not happening." However, on December 8th, 1986, Frank realized that's not their imagination. There's something going on here, right? So Frank, Tina, Karen, and then Tina's friend Kathleen had come back to the house on Lawrence Street in Pepperell, Massachusetts, and had found that someone had used their toilet, and there were several items in the house that were in a place. So Frank starts looking around. He's like, "That's not right. That's not right. That's not right. What's going on?" And he finds a young man wearing what he described as a hairy jacket, like a big furry coat or something, I don't know, who had face paint all over his face, hiding inside of a closet. He comes out of the closet with a hatchet. We don't like that, and thank goodness he wasn't all like smash, 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 because that's really scary. But he did. Well, he also had a steel wrench, but he did force all 3 girls and Frank into a bedroom. And so Tina is like, Absolutely the fuck not. So she climbs out the window and she runs to a neighbor's house and she gets help. So the police are called. They get there. They search the home. They find no trace of this intruder. And Frank told the police, look, this guy looked like he was maybe in his early 20s. He was 6 feet tall, dark hair, had face paint, whatever. Tina confirms this person is tall, dark hair. She thinks he could be anywhere between 17 to 26. But, after this incident, the Bowen family are advised, why don't you guys go stay somewhere else while we do an investigation? Like, we don't know who this person is. If he was, inside your home, like, would he try to come back and finish the job or whatever? Like, you guys go stay somewhere else while we do this. Now, I don't know what kind of investigation they were doing because Frank goes back a few days later and he needs to get some essentials for him and the girls. He pulls in the driveway and what does he see but a face looking at him through the window? And so he's like, I don't even think so. So he calls the police again and he was like, that motherfucker is back. And so they're like, honestly, Frank, this is starting to feel like you're making it up. Like, really? Why would the guy come back? That doesn't even make any sense whatsoever. And it doesn't make any sense. But when he gets inside the home, he sees a knife sticking out of the wall. And the knife was holding up a picture of the Bowen family. And it said, I'm still here. Come find me. Written in magic marker. Absolutely not. On another wall, there was another picture that had, I'm going to kill you all written on it with a knife through it. So, police are there. They are seeing this, right? Other officers show up and they're searching the house because they're like, okay, this is super weird, okay? They eventually do find somebody hiding in a narrow triangular wall cavity in the bathroom. Officer Bezenson pulls out his pistol and he's like, I found him. I got the son of a bitch right here. And so they're trying to get him to come out. They ask him to, put his hands up, come out, all the things. He doesn't want to. So the eyewitnesses say that this officer says, come out right now. I'm going to blow your brains all over that wall. But reportedly, even in that situation, Daniel LaPlante did not seem to be worried or concerned or scared or anything. It was then that they learned that Daniel had been living in the crawl space of the Bowen home for several weeks. Now, again, here's where urban legend kind of starts to creep in because you might read or hear that he had drilled peepholes into every single one of the walls so that he could spy on the family and all of those things. And that he was like, for 6 weeks, I don't know that you can effectively live in a crawl space. That doesn't. Now, I'm not a crawl space expert. I can tell you I'm not going to go in one. I'm not going to go near one. What's down there? That's none of my business, okay? But for a kid who is stealing things on a regular, his MO appears to be he breaks into a house, he steals crap. He was a very impulsive child. He had freaking ADHD. Do you think he could sit there and be quiet until the exact right moment that whole time in a wall? And then what? Is he going through the walls to the different rooms and just peephole to peephole? Maybe he did break in there a few times or whatever. Maybe he did target this family and he was breaking it. I mean, obviously he was in there at least twice because we found him. But I just don't know that the urban legend of him living in this complex system in the walls that he, I don't, it sounds creepy, scares the shit out of me, but I don't know that that's actually exactly the way that it happened, if that makes sense. Either way, he was 16 at the time and he was arrested and charged with armed assault in a dwelling, breaking and entering, malicious injury to property, and armed burglary. So first he was sent to Bridgewater Hospital where he was given an evaluation. Then he was sent to the juvenile detention facility. He stays in that juvenile facility until October of 1987. And the court decided they're going to try him as an adult for this, and they are going to give him a $10,000 bail. His mom, Eleanor, remortgaged her home to pay for his bail, and then he's out and he lives with his mom and his stepfather. This is going to prove to be absolutely tragic. Now, it had not even been a full month of being out, and Daniel, now 17, started breaking into his neighbors' homes again, which again is his MO. On November the 16th, 1987, he broke into Andrew and Priscilla Gustafson's home and stole several things, including a cordless phone and a cable box. He hid these items in his brother's tool cabinet so his parents would not find them. He would continue to break into the homes of other neighbors in the weeks that followed. Daniel also obtained a gun in the weeks following his release. He also lied to his brother's friend in order to get bullets for the gun. Daniel told him that he wanted to use the bullets to make a large bullet and sell it. Super weird, but go off, sis, you know? So the friend gives Daniel some .22 caliber bullets from a carton that he had, and Daniel reportedly practiced loading and unloading the gun. Then on December 1st, 1987, Daniel's crimes shifted from burglary and possibly, living in somebody's walls to full-blown murder. So Daniel returned to the Gustafson home to steal more of their belongings, but this time he brings a gun with him. Why? He never did that before. And it did not appear that he ever needed it before. Needed it in air quotes. He didn't need it at any time. But what is the gun for? If you break into a home and you don't realize somebody's home, you would just run away, right? Or if you're going to break into a home and somebody's home, then you would just avoid that home, right? What is the gun for? So he breaks in, and 33-year-old Priscilla, who's pregnant at the time, returned home with her 5-year-old son, William. And obviously, Daniel is not expecting this. So he has a choice to make. He could GTFO and RUN an OFT, or he can use his gun. Guess which one he picked? Priscilla Jean Gustafson was born on January 13th, 1954 in Havelock, North Carolina. She had a brother named William and 2 sisters, Beth and Christine. Priscilla was a nursery school teacher and had been married to Andrew for 12 years. Abigail Morgan Gustafson was born on December 8th, 1979 in Leominster, Massachusetts, and was described as a bright 7-year-old. William Andrew Gustafson was born on November 12th, 1982, also in Massachusetts. The memorial on Find a Grave reads, William's world was one of exploration and discovery, typical of a 5-year-old. His bright eyes and joyful spirit would have been a constant joy and wonder to his family. As the younger brother of Abigail and the son of Priscilla and Andy Gustafson, his life interwoven with theirs in the everyday magic of life. Daniel has stated that when he heard the family return, he thought about just jumping out of the window, but then he was like, nah. He then confronted Priscilla and William with the gun and brought them into the master bedroom, where he put William in the closet and then tied Priscilla to the bed. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Okay, this is the part with the child murder, and there's going to be sexual assault, and she's pregnant, remember. It's rough stuff, okay? If you don't want to hear this part, I would skip ahead a couple minutes maybe. He then raped Priscilla and acknowledged that he could have left then. He could have left then. But he decided not to. He takes a pillow, he puts it over Priscilla's face, and he shoots her twice in the head. But you gotta muffle those gunshots, right? Okay, I'm telling you, this is really, really rough. And I'm telling you, if you haven't skipped ahead because you're like, maybe, maybe not, if you're on a maybe, skip ahead, okay? He then took William out of the closet and brought him to the upstairs bathroom, and he drowned him in the bathtub. And then he was going to leave. But 7-year-old Abigail gets home from school at that time. He shouldn't have done any of it, but he could have left. What was she going to do? She wasn't going to do anything. William wasn't going to do anything. They're children. They never would have found him based on anything that they said. There was no reason to kill any of them, of course. But like, she wasn't even there. He's leaving. He sees Abigail. He lures her into a different bathroom. And he drowns her in the bathtub as well. Daniel then fled the scene. He went home. He got something to eat. He went to his niece's birthday party. And for him, it was like nothing had happened. And now he has an alibi because he's like, when the police ask, he's like, well, I was at my niece's birthday party. Everybody saw me there, right? Around 5:30 that evening, Andrew Gustafson comes home from work and he found his wife's body in their bedroom. Like, he walks in, he's calling out. And if you've got a family, kids, that when you walk, especially young kids, 5 and 7, and she's pregnant, you're walking in and it's straight fucking chaos, right? At 5:30 p.m., she's trying to get dinner going. The kids are fighting. Somebody made a mess of something. It's like all the things are happening all at once. That is the most chaotic time in my household. Well, from like 5 p.m. to like 9 p.m. basically. It's like all chaos. It blends together. But you know what I mean? When you walk in the door from work at that time of day, it's just like noise, like the Grinch, right? Noise. He walks in and it's silent. But they should be home. There's no noise. He hears nothing. So he walks up the stairs. He's calling out, trying to get their attention. Nobody's responding. And he finds his wife's body in their bedroom. And in 1990, he told the Los Angeles Times, quote, "I was too afraid of going to look for my children because I was afraid I'd find them dead. It was shocking and unbelievable. I screamed. I wailed." Andrew called the police, and Officer George Aho found Abigail and William in separate bathtubs. And you can say, well, what if he had searched the house and they had been in need of help or anything like that? But I think, first of all, none of us could know what we would do in that situation. But also there was no noise. There was nothing. It was 100% silent in that house. Eerily so, right? Again, if you have a family, kids that age, if I were to walk into my house knowing that my husband and children are home and it's silent, I would be very, very, very concerned. Like, it's absolutely heartbreaking what this man had to get. That was his entire family wiped out like that. Because Daniel LaPlante was like, maybe I will, maybe I won't. With human lives. Okay. The officers at the scene were aware of Daniel LaPlante and his history, and he was immediately considered a suspect. They knew he had just gotten out of the juvenile detention center. They knew that he had a history of breaking into houses, and they knew that he had been maybe living in somebody's walls and like terrorizing them. He was one of the first people that they were like, we need to go talk to this guy. So a warrant was issued for his arrest on December 3rd, 1987, and the search was on. The police suspected that Daniel would flee Townsend and potentially head back to Pepperell, where the Bowens lived, because he knew that area very well. Sightings of Daniel began pretty much right away, and residents in the area were calling in about seeing a suspicious man in the area. The state police and other law enforcement personnel joined in on the search as well. The police were trying to maintain a perimeter around a wooded area where they thought that Daniel might be. One officer pulled into the driveway of a home on Jewett Street when the resident, Lynn McGovern, came around from the exterior of her house and asked him to escort her inside. She had just gotten home and she said, "I've got a very uneasy feeling." But the officer was like, "This could negatively affect our perimeter containment situation, but I'm not going to refuse." When Lieutenant Lane and Lynn entered her house, they encountered Daniel LaPlante, who had been armed with a revolver, a shotgun, and a high-powered rifle. When he saw the police cruiser outside, though, he jumped out the window and he ran away into the woods. So the search for Daniel continued as officers made their way onto Elm Street, and Lieutenant Lane could hear a woman screaming. The screaming was coming from the home of Ed Gilligley, and when Lane arrived, Pam Michaela, who lived in another house on Elm Street, told him that she had gotten home and found a man with a gun inside. Pam knew that it was Daniel LaPlante, and she said that he had told her that she was going to drive him out of the area because he only had his learner's permit. Okay. I'm sorry. But that's like, I don't know. I'm not allowed to drive, so I'm going to make you do it. Like, okay, well, you're not allowed to, like, hide in people's houses. You're not allowed to murder people. You're not allowed to burglarize people. But okay, let's stick to the drive. I mean, I'm assuming it's because he, like, didn't really know how to drive, I guess, and he thought it would give it away. But still, it's kind of like, objectively, if it's like, well, I'm not allowed to do that, I only have a permit. Like, it is kind of funny. Anyway. Pam and Daniel got into her car and they started driving, but when she saw Ed talking to someone outside who happened to be a police officer, she jumped out of the vehicle. Daniel, though, took the car and he drove to Ayer, Massachusetts. However, his getaway car was a bright orange van that had 2 for sale signs on it, and they knew which vehicle he was in because she just told him what vehicle he was in. It's not like that was the vehicle he was in yesterday and he continually changes vehicles day by day by day by day. He stayed in the same vehicle. Daniel LaPlante, my God. I'm glad you're this dumb. But you should know they know what you're driving, right? Anyway. He ditched the van. He fled on foot, but they found him and they caught him. He was hiding in a dumpster in a lumberyard. It was a Massachusetts state trooper who had found Daniel, and it was Officer Bezenson who positively identified him. After his arrest, he was transported to the Massachusetts State Police Barracks in Concord. When he was forced to strip, Daniel admitted to having a gun, which he had stolen from Lynn McGovern's house, hidden in the crotch of his underwear. Wouldn't you notice that? It must be a very small gun. In 1988, Daniel LaPlante went to trial for the triple murder of Priscilla, Abigail, and William Gustafson. He was found guilty of all 3 murders, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2017, he did make an attempt to be released from prison after a law in Massachusetts went into effect that stated that juveniles that were sentenced to life in prison should be given the opportunity to re-enter society. A resentencing hearing was granted, and Daniel apologized and asked for a second chance. And he said, quote, "Words cannot fully capture what I have done. I murdered 3 innocent people. Because of me, a 5-year-old boy will never turn 6. There's a 7-year-old girl that will never turn 8. Because of me, a woman will never be able to give birth to her 3rd child. I robbed an unborn child of his first breath. A husband was never able again to hear from his family, 'I love you.' I do not have the words to fully express my profound sorrow, but I am truly sorry for the harm that I have caused. From the very essence of who I am, from the depth of my soul, I am sorry." However, after a psychiatric evaluation, it was determined that Daniel LaPlante showed no empathy, and he continued to minimize his behaviors. Christine Morgan, Priscilla's sister, spoke at the hearing and said that her sister would not want Daniel to see the light of day. Andrew Gustafson's second wife, Carol, has said that Andrew was plagued by nightmares of his family's murder until he passed away from cancer in 2014. And I mean, how would you not be? Like, oh gosh, I cannot imagine. Carol said, quote, "Do not let this man out. He should rot in prison." Daniel was then sentenced to 3 15-year sentences to be served consecutively, so a total of 45 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole after serving those 45 years, and he'll be 62 years old at that time. After Daniel's arrest, Frank Bowen expressed anger that he had been released at all. And he also stated, quote, if Daniel LaPlante does not get convicted and gets out again, I will personally kill him." Now, do we advocate for that? No. Can you understand why he might feel that way? Yes. You let this guy out who he came at me with a hatchet. He held hostage my daughters and her friend and myself, and I don't know what he would have done had she not jumped out the window and run and got the police. And the police kind of thought we were crazy. And then he came back. He was inside the house again. That's I don't know if we can rehabilitate this kind of shit, okay? But then on top of that, you let him out anyway. And he goes and he kills 3 people. Are we really to believe that we didn't think violence was the next step? Because we know that these things escalate. And at first he was just stealing stuff and he was just moving stuff around. And that's not ideal, but it wasn't violent. Now he's got a gun. Now he's pulling out a hatchet and a steel wrench. Why? You don't come at somebody with a hatchet if you don't think there's any reason you might use it. Why did he have it on him in the first place if he was just trying to steal stuff or hide or whatever? He was prepared to use violent force. That's why. On January 1st, 1989, Andrew Gustafson married his second wife, Carol, who we talked about, and she was a widow at the time as well. They had known each other when they were both still married to their late spouses. They actually went to church together. Carol's first husband died in 1984 of a brain tumor after 15 years of marriage. Andrew stated that he didn't know if he would have been able to make it without Carol. This is so sweet. Carol and Andrew both wore their wedding rings. Okay. They wore 2 wedding rings. Their new ones on their left hand, so to symbolize their marriage to each other. And then their original wedding rings on their right hand to honor their first spouses who passed away. It's just so sweet. Carol's first husband's father gave her away at her wedding to Andrew, and Priscilla's brother sang, and Carol's matron of honor was her former sister-in-law. So sad. It's so sad. It's so sad. And they did have 2 children together as well. I believe 2 girls. The whole thing is just so sad. Again, there are some elements that are, super creepy that may or may not be true, some embellishments and things like that. I watched a video by Dr. Todd Grande. I don't know if you've ever watched any of his videos, but he's a psychologist, I don't know which. But he will analyze cases and he analyzes, things that are happening and, whatever. And he did an analysis on this case and, he's like, the living in the walls thing. But definitely, there are I have not personally seen police records from when Frank Bowen and, his girls were taken hostage by Daniel LaPlante, but that does seem to be something that actually happened. And then all of the other stuff kind of came after it. Like you'll read that there was kind of the way that Dr. Grande talks about it is all of these things would have had to have taken place for the urban legend part of it to have actually happened. So the mother passed away, then the girls would have to be open to conducting a seance, and he would have to know that. He would have to know that they might be open to doing a seance. Then they would have to do the seance and be open to receiving some kind of tapping or something in their home that they can't explain. And then they would have to be, open to all of these things. Oh, maybe this is my mom's spirit. So there's a lot of stuff that when you read about it, especially under the name Annie Andrews, that she wanted to do a seance just to see. She didn't necessarily believe in him, but she wanted to see if she could communicate with her mother who had passed away. There was tapping in the walls, so she thought that's who she was communicating with. Then it started getting really creepy, and then she was like, well, I don't think my mom would want to scare me this much. So then they thought, well, maybe it's haunted, and and then you also would have to believe that she gets a random phone call from somebody who she's never met before who says, I'm got your number from a friend. Don't ask the friend's name, but let's go on a date. And she's like, yeah, sure. And there's a lot of stuff there. So it does make more sense that they probably went to school together. He may have known about her mother at that point, but I don't know that there was all of this, she was trying to communicate with the other side. That there seem to be things that are just inflated and for that urban legend factor. So anyway, I always love Dr. Grande's analysis. But that's the case. And let me know what you think. And I'll talk to you on the next one. Love you. Bye. If you like this episode, be sure to like this episode and follow the show so that you never miss out on new episodes. Get in on the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Killer Queens Pod, or you can join our Facebook discussion group at Killer Queens Podcast, where we discuss cases covered on the show and all things 90s. If you want to submit a case to be covered on the show, visit killerqueenspodcast.com/case submission and just complete the form. And if we cover the case, we'll give you a shout out on the show. Lilas.